All right, on today's episode, okay, we're gonna talk a lot about something called anchoring. All right, that's gonna be the theme of today's session. If you followed us from last episode, we were kind of ending with a little bit of that. We were having Lucas get outside hand high, inside hand low, and deadening me as a pass rusher in my path. But not all pass rushes work on the outside. A lot of pass rushers like to come what we call down the middle or work what's called a bull rush. In that instance, the offensive tackle needs to be able to anchor and hold his ground so he doesn't get walked back into the quarterback's lap. A lot of hurries and pressures in the NFL occur when the offensive tackle gets bull rushed into the quarterback. May not result in a sack, but it certainly impacts the passing game. And so it's so important for offensive tackles to be able to anchor in their position. That's why we call, if you remember from our first episode with Lucas, is going to be episode 4 in the series, we actually called the point where Lucas gets in his vertical set his anchor point. And so what we're going to talk about is how Lucas can get to that point and be able to anchor and hold his ground by taking on force. Now, I've lost roughly around 50 pounds since we started filming these shows, so I don't bring the same amount of weight that I used to. But I am going to provide some force to Lucas. He's going to have to hold his ground as I come in. Now, I'm going to line up in a 5 technique. Lucas, come here and get into your set for a second. Okay, for those who aren't familiar with the numbers of techniques, as we call it, a 5 technique is when an edge player, or any player for that matter, lines up outside shade of the offensive tackle. So the way I'm lined up, my inside shoulder is in line with his outside shoulder. That makes me a 5 technique. The other technique I'm going to do during this drill is a 7 technique. And this is, I want you to imagine there's a tight end set up next to him. In a 7 technique, I'm outside shade the tight end. Now, even though there's no tight end here, okay, I am still in a 7 technique because this is where I would be lined up if I were going against a tight end. And in these 2 techniques, we see a lot of bull rushing from here because I'm so close to Lucas at the line of scrimmage that he can get back to his spot before I can get around him. And so for me, the fastest path to the quarterback is a straight line. I'm gonna work that bull rush right in here. Lucas has to get to his anchor point. He's gotta get 2 hands on, and he's gotta not give up ground at the point of contact. That's what we're looking for here. Let's line it up. Set, go. That's it, go. Good. That's it, go. Good. That's it, go. Look at this, stay here. Look at this. We got this great extension here, okay? Part of the reason why I can't get into his body and I can't move him is because he's punching through to extension, which means this is all locked out. I can't penetrate. He's got space between us. He's in a position of strength. That's what we're looking for when we do these anchor points. Shaping and chaining. And every session we do is aimed at shaping one phase of a drill into the next phase. And since today's theme is anchoring and working on what an offensive tackle needs to do at their anchor point, we're gonna take what you just saw, which was a 2-handed bull rush down the middle of the offensive tackle, and we're gonna shape it into another version of a bull rush that's become extremely popular with pass rushers in today's NFL, and that's something called the long arm. If you watch my Tuesday night show, digital show on Pro Football Network called PFN Weekly, myself and my co-hosts Cody Rourke and Benjamin Albright, we spoke about Bradley Chubb of the Denver Broncos. We highlighted him because he had just played the New England Patriots, and that was how he got his sack in that game. He long-armed the left tackle, Isaiah Wynn, all the way into Cam Newton's lap for a sack, a strip, and a fumble. And so today it's so important that offensive tackles learn what to do. One of the offensive tackles who is fantastic at defending, yes, offensive tackles defending against the long arm, is Lane Johnson of the Philadelphia Eagles. And one of the great things he's good at is when the hand gets on the chest, he chops it off and pins the pass rusher into the ground. He doesn't let the hand get into his chest and then do nothing and walk himself all the way back. And so what we're gonna work on now with Lucas is I'm gonna bring long arm pass rushes, and Lucas has to chop my hand down. Now this is a feel, okay? Some offensive tackles like to chop down with the inside, okay? Or they like to wave off with the outside and then shoot the outside to the outside shoulder of the pass rusher. When Lucas and I have worked on, what Lucas has been conditioned for, okay, is to do what feels natural. You don't want to script these things because they're reactions, right? These are responses and behaviors to what the pass rusher is doing. And so what we want to make sure is that Lucas does what comes natural and feels right for him in that moment. If I get the long arm here and I have my outside shoulder away from him, it might make sense for him to chop, okay, and then get the inside hand right where it is, all right? Or, okay, if I get my hand here, now the outside hand can wave off, my shoulder's exposed, right for the strike right there. And so we're gonna look for a combination of those things. Bottom line, what can't happen, Lucas can't get walked back by my long arm. He's gotta get my hand off of him. That's what we're looking for in our contingent criteria for this behavioral drill. Set, go. Set, go. Set, go. Now, did you see that there? Okay, that right there was a lift. I got my hand on, I kept my shoulder square to him, and so what he did was lift my hand up and then get hands on. That is actually something specific to what the Kansas City Chiefs want Lucas and their other offensive tackles to do in that situation. Remember, what we do here at the Behavior Movement, we are not, okay, we are not gurus. We're not making up our own stuff, forcing players to do what I think is best, regardless of what their coaches want them to do. It's what their coaches want them to do, we help them get better at, okay? And that's a classic example. They want the offensive tackles to lift, so when we do our long arm drills, we're gonna get hand in, see that lift up, and boom. Now Lucas has 3 tools in his toolbox on how to handle the long arm rush. And that's what we want these guys to have. Options and be fluent in each and every one of them. And if the lift is something the Kansas City Chiefs want Lucas to do, then that's what we're gonna work on, because the goal is for Lucas to be a better Chief. And that's what we're doing. All right, sticking with the theme of shaping and chaining, all right, we are going to continue to move into this next shape, this next phase of this anchor point theme for today's session. What you just saw was the long arm, and we gave Lucas 3 ways in which to disengage a long arm pass rush. We gave the inside chop, we gave the outside wave off, and then lastly, what's very important to the Kansas City Chiefs is we gave the lift and hands on, okay? But guess what? Pass rushers don't just stop when their first move doesn't work. They keep coming until the whistle, and it's very important that tackles do the same. In our very first session with Lucas for our episode, okay, what we talked about was getting sticky or getting stuck. And that's when an offensive tackle would get their hands knocked away and they forget to re-engage, and the pass rusher is able to work through. Well, guess what? That happens with your feet too. Okay, you can't just take initial contact and stop your feet. You've got to keep moving to that anchor point, because the pass rusher is going to continue his way too. So what we're doing now, we're going to do our long arm drill, okay, but now we're going to focus on what the Kansas City Chiefs want him to focus on in this particular situation, this particular environment, okay, is going to be the lift. What you're going to see is a long arm come in, shoulders are square, so this is the key that the lift is a good move here. You're going to lift that hand up and get hands on, but guess what? I'm going to keep coming with the bull rush. You saw the first link of the chain was the 2-handed bull rush by itself. The next link of the chain was the long arm by itself. Now we're putting it together for a continuous pass rush, which is what Lucas is going to see game day on Sundays. And the most important thing we do here when we talk about adding behavior science for the behavior movement of offensive tackles, we've got to do our best to simulate the environment as best we can. And that's what we're doing now. Sit, go. Go. Usually not a successful pass rush when this is where you end up. Ready, set, go. Very good. Ready, set, go. Go. Blew me off on that one. Let me tell you something too. I mean, Lucas is 6'7", 315. I'm not little. I'm 6 feet but I weigh like 240. It's like what DNs, speed rushers weigh, and it's like nothing, man. I mean, look at me, I'm embarrassed for myself. But hey, 5 consecutive correct responses, that's the goal. Okay, this is the final phase, the final shape, the final link of our chain today for our anchor point theme for today's session. You saw the two-handed bull rush, you saw the long arm, then we shaped both of those things into a long arm continuation, right? Because the pass rusher keeps coming even after that first primary move doesn't work or doesn't land or isn't effective. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna add a little bit more pressure and stress to Lucas during this drill. I think I'm great. I try to be really good as a simulated pass rusher, but I understand too that I am not an NFL caliber pass rusher. It's always important, as I said before, to make sure to the best of our abilities, we are simulating the high pressure situation that is in the environment for these professional athletes. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna line up here, and Lucas is gonna line up, okay, in the spot he has been in his position. And what we're gonna do is as Lucas works to his anchor point, I'm going to attack him from a full-on lateral angle. And Lucas's job as he's working his vertical set to his anchor point is first to get his eyes to this corner of my shoulder. That's his target. One of the things I always say, aim small, miss small, okay? So I don't want him knowing that a body is coming at him. I want him to specifically look for the target his hand has to be placed on to be successful. So that's number one, get your eyes to the target. Number two is he's gonna take this contact as best as I can give it from a side angle. And so he's got to get that hand extended, and I'm gonna work him. And because we're deep now in the pass rush at this point, as I'm working, those hips are gonna kind of open as I work to the high point of the loop around the quarterback. The reason we're doing this is because I don't have the burst of a Khalil Mack. I don't have the burst of a Von Miller, okay? What I do have is the ability to kind of take out that first part. So I'm gonna come from this side angle, I'm gonna add some stress to Lucas's environment, and we're gonna see if he can continue to perform at the high level that he does, keeping that contingent criteria. If you remember from previous episodes, behavior is all about contingent criteria. That's how random movements become behaviors. You make them contingent on something else. So for Lucas to be successful, he's got to do this 5 times consecutively with correct responses. And at that point, we can be done, okay? He's done that all the way through so far. So what is contingent in this drill? Proper hand contact, not getting past the hash marks. See the hash marks on the ground here, okay? That's our physical cue. I cannot work him past those hash marks, and then he also can't give up that outside edge. If all 3 of those things happen, Lucas was correct. He does that 5 times in a row, and we're all done for the day until we see you next time. Let's line it up. Ready, set, go. Good. Keep on that hash mark. That's our criteria. Don't get past the hash. Ready, set, go. I'm gonna get past the hash if I keep getting lifted off my feet. Keep it up, keep it up. Ready, set, go. There you go, good, good, good. Now notice that one, okay? I got in on his body a little bit, but he didn't give up, and he worked through all the way to extension. Still didn't give up the spacing on the edge, on the going past that hash mark there. So important for tackles to not give up when you get beat. Don't panic, don't kind of flail and not know what to do. Stay true to your technique and your coaching, and it will work like it just did there for Lucas. Here we go, we got 2 more.